Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Roadmaster high power diode wiring kit on our 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. Your 5 main components are going to be your tow bar, which will connect your RV to your Jeep, your base plate, which is a physical connection that the tow bar connects to, your supplemental braking system, which helps the Jeep to come to a safe and slow stop behind the motorhome, your diode wiring kit, which is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Jeep, and then finally your safety cables. This is going to come into play in an unlikely disconnect. If the tow bar were to ever come disconnected from the Jeep, those safety cables are going to kick in and keep the Jeep behind you so that you can get over to the side of the road and come to a safe and slow stop. This kit is designed to transfer the lighting signals from your motorhome back to the taillights on the back of your Jeep. This is going to be for flat towing your vehicle so that you can safely get those signals back here. It will transfer your running lights, your stop and turns, and your hazard lights. So no matter what your motorhome's lights are doing, it's going to transfer those signals back here. Now there are a couple other options out there on the market for transferring the lighting signals. The 2 main ones are going to be your bulb and socket, which is drilling a hole in the back side of your taillight and putting a separate bulb in and then running your 4-pole wiring up to the front of your vehicle. I don't like that option because I really don't like tampering with the factory housing on the light. The other option, which is going to be more common that you may have seen or have, is the magnetic lights. Well, on a Jeep, that's pretty hard to use that kit because the tops on the back, whether it's a soft top or the fiberglass top, those magnetic lights are not going to stick to it. So you're kind of left to stick it to the side of the vehicle, and I really don't like that idea either. So having this diode wiring kit, the vehicle looks no different other than the 6-pole that's mounted on the front. You simply plug in your motorhome, or plug it into the motorhome side and then plug it into your Jeep, and then once you take off down the road, it's going to transfer those signals back into our taillights. Now the diodes, their purpose is to transfer that signal safely. So it's going to protect your vehicle's wiring and lights and your motorhome's wiring and lights. It's also going to act as sort of a T-fitting, so your signal from your vehicle, the original signal, is going to come back, go into the diode, but then also your 4-pole wire for your left turn or right turn or your running light signal is also going to go into the diode, and then there's going to be one wire coming off of that going back to the taillight. So it kind of splits the signal to for you to decide whether or not you want the vehicle to send it or the motorhome to send it. Now this kit is going to come with the 4-pole wiring and the 4 diodes that you need to get wired up to your taillights. There are other kits available that will include the 6-pole plug and the pigtail. With our particular situation, the owner of our vehicle had already purchased a Roadmaster Nighthawk, which is a great idea if you're starting from scratch. The Roadmaster Nighthawk is a great tow bar, but it's going to come with the pigtail pre-run inside the tow bar, and it'll also come with a 6-pole. So that's why we only went with the 4-pole wiring and the diode. So just pick up whichever kit that you need. Really, the bulk of the installation is going to be getting that 4-pole wiring from the bumper to the back of the vehicle to the taillights. It's really not too difficult. If you're installing the Air Force One like we are today, or a braking system that doesn't involve using the signals from the 4-pole wiring, then it's going to be a lot easier because we just ran it from the frame rail, went in the frame rail up here at the front of the vehicle, and then fish wired it all the way back through the frame, which I really like to do if I can because it's going to protect that wire from getting snagged on anything, especially being on a Jeep. If you take it off-road, you don't want it to get caught on anything. But if you do have one of those systems, the braking systems that involve tapping into those 4 wires, I highly recommend running it from the bumper up into the engine bay, put a loop in it, and then run it back down and get inside that frame as fast as you can on the frame rail itself. So all you have to do is just follow along with us, and hopefully you're able to get your kit installed. Now to begin our installation, we recommend taking the bumper off because it's going to make it a lot easier to run all your wiring. We have ours off from when you do your base plate. Most of the base plates that fit the Jeeps, you're going to have to remove the bumper anyway, so I recommend doing your diode wiring while you're doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run the 4-pole wiring from the front of our Jeep to the back, and we need to get it back by our driver's side taillight. I'm going to go ahead and run that wiring, and we'll come back and show you the route that I took. We've got our wire run to the back of our vehicle. I always like to peel the white wire back. We've got about 6 feet or so peeled off. You don't need that white wire to go all the way back because we're going to be grounding it up in the engine bay. So I've got the 4 poles sticking out here. We went into this little hole in our frame that you can see. We went back through our frame. And what you want to do is, we'll come around this side of the vehicle. You just want to reach through the frame, and I used a piece of airline tubing. You may not have any. There should be some. If you're getting a kit, like an Air Force One kit, it'll have some in it. You can use a small section, or you can use a coat hanger. But just fish it back through, and on these Jeeps, it's really nice because there's plenty of holes big enough to pull the wire through, and we just fished it through. You can see the wire on the inside there. Just fish it through all the way back through our frame, and then came back and out of the bottom of or the side of our frame back here by our taillight. So now we're ready to go up through this hole in our body up into the taillight. They're going to have these panels back here that are covering our 10 millimeter plastic bolts that we'll have to take out to get our taillight to release. So you pop this panel off. You can see that plastic bolt right there. It is spring loaded. So we'll just take a 10 millimeter socket and get those released. It's a good idea to keep your hand on the taillight so that it doesn't fall out. But there's that plastic bolt. And now the taillight just pops right out. We're going to disconnect this clip just to give ourselves a little bit more space to work. And putting diodes on Jeeps are really nice because the opening here is nice and large. There's nothing back here. A lot of vehicles, you have barely any room to store a diode behind the taillight. There we go. And we'll set this inside of our vehicle in a safe place. Now I'm going to go ahead and take out the passenger side taillight. Now we've got our brown and yellow wires passed up into our taillight housing. I've got the green wire still down here because it just needs to go over to the passenger side, so I peeled it back before I ran this wire up. Now we can take these wires, we'll cut them so that they're long enough to reach up here, connect to our diodes, and then our plug can still do what it needs to do behind the taillight. We'll take this, and we'll split these 2 wires. The brown wire, we will be attaching the remaining length of our brown wire down below that we just cut off. We're going to attach that here, and then that is going to go into the large spade terminal. The reason why we have to attach the remaining brown wire in with this is because we need to get a running light signal from our motorhome over to the other side of our vehicle too. So we had to make a jumper wire. This is going to go back down with our green wire and run over to the passenger side. We're going to take one of our blue spade terminals, crimp that onto our yellow wire that we ran back. And now we can start working on the factory wires. So I already tested these out, so you don't have to. On the driver's side, our stop and turn signal is going to be our yellow wire. And then our running light signal is going to be the white wire with a small gray stripe on it. So you can see those are the wires that we've got cut here. We need to put spade terminals on all 4 of these. Once you get them crimped on, you want to give them a little tug to make sure that they're not going to come off. We can start putting our diodes in place. It's easiest to remember the 2 little wires that are going straight to our plug is going to be our out. And if you see any of these spade terminals that are kind of loose when you put them in, what I like to do is take your pliers and just crush those teeth just a little bit, enough to bite on to this tab a little bit better. There we go. That's a much more firm hold onto it. So since we're doing the stop and turn, that is going to be our yellow wire. Take that, same thing. And you'll put that on one of the ends. And then the other side of our yellow is going to go into the other end. Do the same thing with our running light signal, which is going to be the brown wire. Get that on there. We'll take the wire going back to the rest of our vehicle. That is your other in. And then your out is going to go to the plug. I took the wire, the brown and the green. The green is inside this frame rail because I pulled it back pretty short. And I just ran it back through the hole we came out of in our frame and then ran it inside this frame tube because this is our hitch receiver. So even if the hitch has to come off, the wires are still safe inside this frame tube. We just ran it across, you can see it there. Run it across and then come out of the same hole on the other side of the frame rail that we ran through to start with, and then up into our body, up into the taillight housing. Now on our passenger side, the wires that you want to look for, they're going to be in the same spots on the plug, but they're different colors of wires. The green wire is going to be our stop and turn, and the white wire with a red stripe or orangish stripe is going to be our running light signal. So we'll go ahead and get those hooked up the same way we did on the driver's side. Now we've got our wires all connected. Again, you want the plug side of the wires to go into the outs on our diodes, and then you want the wires coming from our 4-pole from our vehicle to go into one end, and then the factory one to go into the other. Now we've temporarily hooked up our 6-pole so that we can test the function of our taillights. We'll start with our running lights, our left turn, brake lights, and our right turn. Now we're going to have to take our ground wire and run it up into the engine bay, and I just grounded it on this little tab right here because that way it'll be out of the way of everything. Now that we know our diodes are working properly, I'm going to take this sticky tape off the back of our diodes, stick them together, so stick them diode to diode. This just helps them to kind of stay put in amongst all this other wiring. We'll stick those together, and then I'm going to take some electrical tape and wrap this whole wad of wires up so that when we put our taillight back in, these are all protected. We can take our 6-pole and get it wired up. Want to make sure that you twist these ends. We already test fitted ours, so the wires are a little jagged. We're going to twist those, make them all nice and neat. And you don't want to trim too much of that jacketing off because you only want enough to where it's going to sit down inside of the 6-pole. If you have any stray wires too, either cut them off or twist them in like I'm doing right now. Then we'll take our 6-pole, and we're going to be using this slot here, and then go around clockwise for your 4 wires. So we'll have this one, and this one. Then we can take our boot. We want to slide this over. Be sure to not forget that because you will be very upset with yourself if you get all these screws tightened down on our 6-pole and you find out that your boot is not on there. So now we can take the appropriate wires, and I did not leave myself very much space to work with here. But you want to start at the top of the 6-pole, so this top pin here will be brown. Then we're going to go to white, yellow, and green. Undo these screws. Do not undo them all the way because the screws will fall out and they are very, very difficult to find. Just back them out enough to where you can fit that wire in. Said we'll start at the top with our brown wire. We'll just go around doing each wire one at a time. There we go. We've got them all in place. Give them all a little bit of a tug. When you're tightening those screws down, be sure to not tighten them down too far because you can damage the wires. Now we're going to pop it up here. And we're going to hook it up to our 6-pole tester one last time to test our functioning of our diodes back there before we put some black silicone in here. Now that we know our 4-pole is working properly, we'll take that black silicone and we're going to squirt it in between each one of these terminals. This just to help with corrosion later on. Take our 6-pole, put it against our bracket. We'll slide our hardware through. And you'll take your hardware and get your 6-pole mounted up to your bracket. So hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the Roadmaster high power diode wiring kit is right for you and your 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.